go to our guy, Carc here, Paul Carcaterra. Busy weekend for you, Carc. Princeton to Columbus, but, man, this is most fun time of the year, huh?
Absolutely. It's great to chat with you. This past week's been a little nuts. I was up in Ithaca for the Ivy Championships the past weekend. Trains, planes, and automobiles. So we were on a car ride from Ithaca, New York. Quinn Kesnick, Chris Cotter, myself, bombed to the studio in Bristol after the game on Sunday, about a 4-hour drive to the selection show. And yesterday I had the PLL draft, and on a plane Saturday after the Princeton-Towson game, we'll make it to Columbus in time for bed and do that banger of a game on Sunday between Notre Dame and Ohio State, which is going to be an awesome, awesome game.
Yeah, that might be the best game of the first round. How did your guys Anish and Quint? They ended up with 8 miles of travel, but they do get the double header on Saturday. While you and Cotter are flying across the country there.
Have you ever seen Anish Schroff drive a car? It's pretty uncoordinated.
I have. I've been in that car before, so yeah. Maybe we should only let's leave them the 8 miles and do that. And then Quint, literally, and this has nothing to do with lacrosse, but it perhaps is the most important thing that happened in lacrosse this weekend. So I pop on the selection show on Sunday night, and Cotter's there, and you're there, and you both look like yourselves, and then Quint has this magical head of hair that I don't recall him ever having before. What is Quint got going on right now?
He's grown his hair out, and in his defense, and I've been getting some text messages, they are not hair plugs. It's real, because I've seen the transition throughout the course of the season.
Okay.
He's loving it. We actually, Cotter and I, gave him a fake name. He's trying to be like a soap opera star, so we call him Thorn. His name is Thorn now.
Okay. I tweeted out a gif of Fabio over the weekend ago that I had. I love that. I thought he looked fantastic. I mean, he's been high and tight every time I've ever sin him. So good for him. All right, let's get into the actual lax here this weekend. We'll start with Cuse getting ready for a rematch with Harvard. How are you feeling about the Cuse going into the tournament after, sliding throughout April and then finding a way to bounce back down in Charlotte last weekend?
I give this team a lot of credit. And what people don't understand is, they went from, bubble central on Thursday, right, the night before the game, to, being a seed and having a home team. And they did it the hard way, but they played the ACC championship when they beat Notre Dame on Friday and Duke on Sunday. They just were selling out on ground balls. They did all the little things. There was a level of want that I hadn't seen throughout the course of the season on a consistent basis. It popped in and out this year. But when their backs were against the wall, they delivered. Those are 2 monster wins that have, positioned them to have a home game. I don't think really anyone after the Carolina blowout was thinking that Cuse could win the ACC and have a home game. So I credit Gary. I credit the staff. John O'Durnan, the defense, played fantastic. Jimmy McCool has played absolutely lights out the last couple of weeks. If you think of his body of work, even in the Carolina game, that game could have been a lot worse. Carolina had 20 shots in the first quarter. McCool was fabulous in that game. He's positioned himself to be one of the best goalies in the country. I think going into the NCAA tournament, McCool and Caleb Fyock from Ohio State, to me, are the 2 hottest goalies. So you have this hot goalie, you have an offense under Pat March that moves the ball at hyperspeed, that's so skilled, a great extra man unit. Ben Thompson back in the unit is, I think, a big plus because he was out for over a month. I think having him is more than just his goal scoring ability. He's probably the best picker in college lacrosse. I know that's not a title people like to give, sets picks. Well, he sets picks like no other. I call him Slip Thompson because he slips off all these picks, and he's just a pain in the backside for any defense to deal with. So, yeah, they're looking really good. I think everyone has high hopes for this rematch against Harvard. That last game, Brian, when they played Harvard, was so weird because Johnny Mullins won over 90. Yeah, he won 90% of the face-offs in the game. Harvard goalie Graham Stevens was under 50%. So, if you combine those two, if I gave you a scenario, Team A wins 90% of its face-offs, and Team B's goalie has less than 50% saves. Like, no one would sign up for a loss in that game.
No.
So it's just
team,
weird. They went up 5-1.
I'd say Team A was up 5-0. I'd say that team never loses that game.
No, exactly. If you add that into the whole win probability, right, like that goaltending scenario, that face-off scenario, and then you're up 5-0 or 5-1, whatever it was, it's crazy that they lost that game. And it was a little bit of like a Maryland hangover. Like, they played Maryland and just didn't look great in that game. And it was a game that I thought was crazy. But I watched Harvard, intently this past week when they played Princeton in the semifinals. They're a really good team. Mm-hmm. They lead the nation, or going into the Ivy League tournament, they led the nation in ground balls, and I think we're ranked like 70th out of 74 teams in the country facing off. That's another crazy stat. Normally, teams that are great on face-offs have more ground balls. Like, Harvard finds ways. They're a great riding team. They put a lot of pressure on you in the full field ride. They come at you and jump you when you're trying to clear. So, like, Syracuse has to get the ball out quickly. When McCool makes a save, he's got to get it out quickly. This is a team that, like, they're a lot to handle in some weird spots, and they have a great quarterback in Sam King behind the cage.
I didn't know a team not named Virginia was allowed to lead the country in ground balls. It seems to be them like literally every year for more than a decade at this point. But yeah, how do you lead the country in ground balls if you're not good at faceoffs? Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, so we look at this tournament as it sets out here. Is there a favorite to you, Cark? I mean, I realize Cornell's the 1 seed. Their offense is unbelievable when it's clicking. Maryland, obviously, you don't want to deal with them at this time of the year. Is there a favorite, though, to you heading into this tournament?
Yeah, it's Cornell is the favorite, but it's not like a 2022 Maryland-type favorite, right? Or, even Notre Dame last year going into the tournament, they were the clear favorite. They had the whole cast of characters from the year before back, right? They had Liam Ensign, they had Pat Cavanaugh, they had Eric Dobson, they had all these pieces, and then you add some great newcomers like a Sean Light, just made them even better, right? So I don't feel like they're at that level of a favorite, but offensively, this is a great offense. Like, this offense is as good as some of the great offenses we've seen over the years, like a Maryland 2022, Penn State 2019. I mean, they are the highest scoring team in the country. They have the number one team in terms of shooting percentage. They're top 3 in extra man. They have the number 1 ranking in terms of assists per game. So the ball's moving at hyper speed. They have so many guys that can beat you. The big thing for Cornell is DJ Kirst is a runaway for the Tewaaraton Trophy, right? He's the best player in college lacrosse. It's not even close. But what's happening is teams that play Cornell can't deny him the ball, because then Ryan Goldstein gets left one-on-one, and they put Kirst in some spots where, like, a guy who's shading him would be sliding, and Goldstein's winning these matchups, and it's almost becoming too easy. So you really can't shut off CJ Kirst. You can't deny him the ball and make it a 5-on-5 game, because they'll kill you with Ryan Goldstein or Hugh Kelleher, right? So there's so many pieces to this team. Like any great offense, they just move the ball better than the rest. And I would say at the end of the day, if there's some parity involved in all this, and there is, you just ride the thoroughbred. You ride the horse that's different than everyone else, and that's CJ Kirst. So I'd have to say Cornell is a favorite.
It would feel like, too, if Cornell can finally nail one of these down, right, like the first since the 70s, they'd be a very popular champ, right, I would think, sport-wide, if they could pull it off this year.
Absolutely. I mean, the last title was 77.
Yep.
And Cornell's an interesting program, Brian, in terms of, like, their culture, right? They are probably the strongest knit in terms of the Cornell lacrosse brotherhood of any lacrosse program. And I say that, it's kind of strange. You're like, well, they haven't won since 77, but that's part of the reason why they're so close. Like, you have guys that are around, like Mike French, who graduated in the 70s, and Tim Goldstein and Joe Lizio, who graduated in the 80s, and Mike Levine, who graduated in the 1990s, and then Rob Pinnell 10 years ago. And, like, you'll go to a Cornell game and you'll run into all of them, right? Like, and they'll all be together and they're all friends, right? Like, where I went to Syracuse, and I'm friendly with people that played in the '80s, but it's like I'm not like tailgating with them, or I'm not like, do you know what I mean? Like It's just because, and not that I wouldn't. It's just that they have like this strong knit brotherhood that's like, it's almost like generational proof, if that makes sense. It's just like they're all together, and like they all know each other, and they've dealt with the close calls. I mean, since 1977, this is a team that's been to 5 national championships, right? It's not like they haven't been there before. They lost in '87 and '88. That was a tough pill for them to swallow. But even recently, they lost in 2022. They lost the final to Syracuse in 2009. Like they've been to championships, and they've come close. But I just feel like this brotherhood is so strong. Even when I was up in Ithaca last weekend for the Ivies, like I walk by a restaurant, I see all these guys in there, and they're not all the same age. They're all hanging out together.
That's interesting. And obviously 09, I mean, that's like the all-time heartbreak game in the history of the I still don't believe that happened, and it's 16 years ago. That's how that game came down to the end. All right, so Cornell's the best. Who do you line up Maryland after that, Cark? I mean, man, you take your chances with them this time of year, or is it somebody else for you?
Maryland is an interesting team, too. Like, John Tillman, I think, has been to 10 championship weekends in 15 years. Right? So he's one of the 4 last teams standing. If you give him a week, like, I don't want to play him in the quarterfinals. If you give him a week, he's going to scheme you up, and he's probably going to beat you. You want Maryland on a Monday, right? Like, I think they've been a different team because if you take away some of his superpower is give him a week to prepare. When you play Maryland on a Saturday, they've had that whole week to prepare. When you play them on Monday, Championship Monday, 2 days later, that's a quick turnaround. Like, you take some of his secret sauce away, right? Like, I think he's the best coach in the country. So when you take the inability for him to prepare and for him to really scheme your team up, you're playing on a more level playing field. So I wouldn't want to be on his part of the bracket. The bad news for Syracuse is they're on that side of the bracket. They'd have to deal with Maryland on a Saturday. The good news is they've played them already, and they're familiar with them because they play them every year. So I think that helps them in that respect. Maryland's not a team that has a ton of stars. Like, for example, Notre Dame preseason had 8 All-Americans, preseason All-Americans. Maryland had 1, and it was a 5'9" goalie, Logan McNaney. So, like, that tells you they beat you with a team. Like, and they have good players, don't get me wrong, but they don't have the superstars. Like, Maryland won't have as many guys drafted probably next year compared to Syracuse. If you don't count, like, the transfers that come in, Syracuse junior class will probably have 3-4 guys drafted in the PLL next year. Maryland doesn't have the level of player right now. Now, they've had a ton of guys who've gone to the pros, but it's just a testament to John Tillman's coaching. I think Syracuse talent-wise matches up with Maryland, but he will scheme you, and he will scheme you. So I wouldn't want to play them on a Saturday. On a Monday, I think they're a different team. Like, I think they would struggle maybe against Cornell on a Monday. The other teams that are interesting to me is Ohio State. Like, Ohio State,
they've played really well.
Yeah, Ohio State lost to Utah, blitzed for 19 goals in the first game of the season. The rest of the year, they had 1 loss. It was to Maryland in the middle of the season. They avenged that loss. They won the Big Ten regular season championship and Big Ten tournament. I just think they're built, like, really, really well. Like, they have a shutdown defender in Bobby Van Buren. They have the best goalie in the country in Caleb Fayak. So you have that side of the field taken care of. Their short stick D middies are, like, really, really gritty and good, and they run a bunch of them. They haven't been great at the face-off, but offensively they're hard to scout because they're like the nameless guys, right? They have a good shooter in Alex Marinier. He's a Canadian guy, scored probably 40-something goals, but they're not a team that everyone's like worried about a superstar here or two. They have Marinier and they have Haas, but they're harder to deal with because they can have anyone beat you from their midfield, dodging and creating. There's like 6 or 7 of these guys, and they believe. Like, this team's believing. And I think as hard as it is for Nick Myers to deal with Notre Dame in the first game for the tournament in this round for the Buckeyes, I also think it's good bulletin board material. Like we won the Big Ten, and look what the committee did. They sent Notre Dame, the two-time defending champs, to us. Like, I'd feel a little bit upset or disrespected if I was Ohio State. So I think Notre Dame is walking into a tough situation.
All right, last thing, Kark. Next hour we got Carter Rice on. Anything good we should ask Carter as we're talking some Syracuse defense here in the next hour? Yeah,
ask him how many miles he's logged on the year on the catapult. That kid, because Syracuse isn't deep at the short stick defensive midfield position, most teams run 4 or 5. Like, he's taking every shift that he has to, right? Like, we're running 2, 3, 4 sometimes, just if he, out of desperation. But like, if he's good to go, he's going on basically every defensive midfield shift. And you could tell him, I am so impressed with that kid. He's an absolute warrior in terms of how he empties the tank every single game. I think he's logged the most minutes or the most miles and minutes on the team this year in terms of the midfield, because he is all over the place, and he's done a fantastic job. And I think he's going to be a really good pro. He's got great feet.
All right, a 4th-round draft pick last night in the draft PLL that you had coverage of. We will ask that. Yeah. I have written it down, Kark, so we are ready to roll on that. All right, Kark, thanks as always. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the month. I'm sure we'll catch up again as we get closer to Memorial Day. All right, there we go.
Again.
Yep, thank you, Kark. There he is, our guy, Paul Carcaterra. Let's hit a break because we actually need to get some commercials in before we talk to Carter here coming up in a little bit. So we're back in a few. Hour 2's next.